think there's a message in there that we could use native plants instead of non-native plants. So with that, please join me in welcoming Laura.
Greg, thanks so much for the warm welcome. And
Sure.
just first want to start off by thanking this group for all that you do, because what you do is really important and is having a real impact in the community and changing people's minds on how do we become more sustainable. So I'm really excited to be here, and I really appreciate the work that you do. On this title slide, if there's nothing you take away from tonight, it's really these three things. So there is a ballot initiative on for November called Issue 47. That's the Code of Levy. And while you won't see the words LinkUS on there, really what you see for Issue 47 is all about more CODA, more sidewalks, and more opportunity. And as we go through the slides here, we'll get to dive in a little bit more about what that means.
Sorry, I'm trying to get the virtual meeting.
Oh,
link up.
you're fine. So basically, LinkUS really helps our region be able to begin to address three of our biggest challenges. One of them is growth. So over the next 25 years, whether we like it or not, we're going to have about 1 million people be coming to our community. And that growth, because this is not new growth, we've been growing pretty steadily over the last many decades, but that rate of growth is increasing. We now have a 200,000 unit housing shortage in Central Ohio. And as a result of that shortage, we now have experienced just in the last 4 years, almost a 50% increase in the median home sale price in our community. And so our median home sale price used to be about 220-some thousand. We're now above 300,000, which is still 100,000 less than the national average, but most people haven't seen that price go up 50% in the country in the last 4 years. The other big thing that we're trying to address with LinkUS is opportunity gaps. So that map that you see there, that is Franklin County. The areas that are darker blue are the areas that are experiencing more opportunity. The areas that are lighter blue are the areas that are experiencing less opportunity. Those areas that are experiencing less opportunity are also the areas where there was redlining, restrictive covenants, and also where the highway system went through those communities. And so we're still dealing with the legacy of some really horrible decisions that were made in the 20th century. And as a result, we have 1/3 of our residents in Franklin County who live in areas of persistent low opportunity. We also have 40,000 residents who lack access to a personal vehicle. And for the last 70 years, we've created a transportation system built around the car. Hit the next slide. So really, the way that we begin to address these three big challenges is through LinkUS. So if we look at more CODA, we're looking to expand CODA service by almost 50% over the next 25 years. We also are looking to expand our sidewalks, bikeways, and trails in our community in a dramatic fashion. So to be able to improve and build 500 miles of new sidewalks, bikeways, and trails in our community, and really begin to create the walkable, bikeable neighborhoods that 79% of Americans say that they want. And also, you know, from an environmental standpoint, be able to address the challenges that we have from greenhouse gas emissions as well. And so if we look at the third point, more opportunity, we are looking to build the infrastructure that we need to be able to grow our economy, but also have the improvements that come to our community, have the people that are already here and live along our transit be the primary beneficiaries, not people who get displaced as a result of these improvements. So if, I know we're working on this.
I'm so sorry.
If I can go by memory, if we're going by, or we'll just pause for a second here.
I'm so sorry. I don't know.
You're fine.
You are online.
Lori, I'll share with you.
Yeah.
Some of this is what I guess I'll call growing pains. We've been doing these virtually with using Google Meet.
Gotcha.
Through
Franklin County Soil and Water Conservation District. As of about last week, we established our own Google Meet account, which required a new link to tonight's meeting.
Yep.
And that has created a technological mishmash.
That is all right. That is,
Well-
we've experienced a lot of that at the city over the last,
I haven't had a
3 or 4 months.
security breach yet, but I don't think anyone's trying to get into our emails, but anyway, cannot apologize enough.
No, you're fine. No, this is, it's not a big deal. And some of this, I can do a lot of this from memory as well. But if we look at issue 47, if we look at LinkUS, we're trying to benefit all of the CODA service area, which is all of Franklin County, and there's some small portions of Union, Delaware, Lincoln, and Fairfield counties. And so altogether, just hit the next slide. Altogether, we're trying to connect 17 cities, 8 villages, and 17 townships within that geography. You hit the next slide. And so what issue 47 does is it looks to increase the CODA sales tax from 0.5% to 1%. And at 0.5%, CODA is basically funded at the same level as Toledo right now. And we're much larger and we're growing faster at Toledo. At 1%, where we want to be is where Cleveland and Cuyahoga County are funded. And at 0.8% in Hamilton County and where Cincinnati's located. And we're looking to have this be a continuing, sometimes you'll see permanent sales tax, because if you look at that light blue slice on the pie chart, CODA wants to sell bonds to be able to help fund these improvements. And in order to sell bonds, you need to have a repayment period much longer than the typical 10-year levy cycle. And so bond repayment is usually more in the 20, 30-year plus standpoint. And so that's why we're looking for continuing funding, as well as we know that even with increasing the CODA sales tax by 0.5%, it still doesn't fully address all of the transportation challenges that we have. And we expect those to continue to grow as we grow in population as a community. This additional revenue will help CODA be able to draw down almost $1 billion in federal funding that's available as a result of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And so really we want to make sure that this time period where we have the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we want to make sure that our community reaps the benefits of this unprecedented money that exists at the federal level to make the transportation improvements that we need to do. So altogether, issue 47 will help to raise about $2 billion in new revenue by 2030 and about $8 billion by 2050. So a dramatic investment in the transportation in our community. Next slide. So if we dive in a little bit more on the more service side of things, next slide. You can see right now, this is the existing CODA service system right now. It's kind of hard to see, but in the background there, those are all of the fixed route lines that CODA has right now. And then those 3 gray areas, those are the CODA Plus zones that CODA has right now. Is anybody familiar with CODA Plus? So CODA Plus is a service within those gray areas that is a point-to-point transportation service similar to Uber and Lyft, but at a very affordable price. So it's only $3 for people to utilize that. Use it with an app on your phone, but it'll take anybody to anywhere within those shaded areas. So there's currently in Grove City, southern neighborhoods of Columbus, and then in Westerville is where CODA Plus is now. CODA would like to expand that CODA Plus service to 8 additional areas within the region. And typically it's going to be in areas that don't necessarily have great fixed route service currently, and where it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest in a lot more fixed route service. But having on-demand service makes a lot of sense. Perfect. So then, what LinkUS also looks to do is to improve 14 CODA lines. So 3 of them will be new, but then you'll also have major improvements to the hours of service to a lot of the lines. So currently CODA only goes to 11 p.m. right now. We've got a lot of workers in our community that work third shift. And so that's a group of workers that I think could tremendously benefit from transit because it is a lot more affordable than it is to own a car to take transit. We're also looking to have more frequency on lines as well. If you click again. And then we have the ability also to fund 5 rapid transit lines. And so rapid transit, we'll get into more of what that is shortly, but we have 3 of those 5 lines that are in design right now. So there's West Broad Street, East Main, and Northwest. So altogether, those investments are how you get that almost 50% increase in the CODA service. Hit the next slide. Oh, the other thing that we're looking to do is, since we do have the ability to fund additional lines, we're gonna be doing some studies. And so there's 3 studies that have funding right now that'll happen within the next probably 2 years here, to look at how we improve transit from a rapid transit perspective. There is a northern neighborhoods of the CODA service area region, so basically connecting Dublin, Columbus, Worthington, Westerville, New Albany, and the Intel site. Then there's a study that is going to look at basically connecting downtown to the airport, to Easton, to New Albany, and then to the Intel site. And then also looking at how do we connect downtown or southern neighborhoods and the Rickenbacker site, where we have a lot of jobs as well. Then one more click here. Then these green lines are other areas that have been identified as areas that we'd like to study in the future to see if we can improve transit through those areas. And so really what we're putting together is not just a short-term, here's how we're gonna address our short-term needs, we're really trying to address our long-term transportation needs for our community. Next slide here. So we have a video here that'll give you a bit more about what we talk about when we mean rapid transit, and then more specifically for the lines that are being designed right now about bus rapid transit.
Every day, we need reliable and predictable transportation to make it to work on time, get to a doctor's appointment, or head to school for parent pickup. As more people move to our region, the number of cars between you and your destination will continue to increase. Public transit offers you more affordable options for how to get from A to B, while reducing the number of cars on the road. LinkUS offers a solution. It's about modernizing our whole public transit system. LinkUS will create bus rapid transit lines, effectively transforming and enhancing CODA for our region. But what exactly is bus rapid transit? Bus rapid transit offers perks like enhanced stations, vehicles, and amenities. CODA's BRT stations will have enhanced features like dedicated lanes to bypass traffic, bicycle parking, interactive screens with real-time updates, high visibility crosswalks, local art, and more. Plus, each BRT vehicle will communicate with upcoming stoplights to catch more greens and fewer reds, creating a safe, enjoyable experience at a new level of speed and ease. Platform level boarding will make it easier to enter and exit for everyone riding the bus. Got wheels? No problem. Strollers, wheelchairs, and bikes are able to roll right on. Plus, customers will pay fares before boarding the vehicle, which enables BRT to spend less time in stops and more time moving. Because of the larger vehicles and greater frequency, BRT systems can move more passengers in a given time frame at levels similar to other rapid transit modes and more than regular bus service. BRT projects around the world have been improving transit options and revitalizing cities for decades. It enables us to build a CODA system that lifts everybody up. Learn more about CODA's plans for bus rapid transit and how it will connect our region at linkuscolumbus.com.
So that gives a really good overview of what we're doing on rapid transit, and then what are the amenities of that. If you hit the next slide,
Hold on. There we go.
this gives you what this would look like here, here in our area. So you can see the red lanes there, those are the bus only lanes. You can see the gray station there in the middle. And then in green, that's where we're going to have protected bike lanes. It doesn't look like much of a protection here because it just has the plastic vertical bollards that you see there. We're actually looking to have a concrete curb be part of the protection for bike lanes. And then if it's not protected bike lanes on West Broad Street, then we're gonna have shared use path that will make it much easier for people to walk and bike all along that corridor. The white buildings you see is the development that we hope that occurs as a result of the investment that we're making in the transportation, but we want that development to be equitable, that is development that doesn't displace our residents. Hit the next slide. Here's another view of that station. This is actually West Broad Street, and this probably looks very different than West Broad Street today. West Broad Street really is like an urban freeway today. We want it to be a much more neighborhood feel to West Broad Street because we have that million people coming. We think that million people make sense, that we encourage people to live and work where we already have transit, where the density makes sense. If you look at where the person that is in the wheelchair is right now is the ramp that's leading up to the station. One of the cool things about that pavement is that it will be heated so that no snow and ice accumulates in that area. So it's just a much better way for people to access transit. Next slide. So if we look at the three corridors that are in design right now, the first one is West Broad Street. It is slated to open in 2028. There's 17 stations. That's 9.3 miles. Basically goes from the Prairie Township Community Center, which is at Rockbrook Crossing, and then goes all the way into downtown Columbus. The areas that are the dashed green lines is where the buses actually will be in mixed traffic. But then when it gets to the solid green line, that's where we have the center running bus rapid transit. So altogether, this connects to about 85,000 jobs. And when we talk about improving access to opportunity, 76% of all of the parcels along this area are located in those areas that are experiencing persistent opportunity gaps. We believe that the bus rapid transit system will improve travel times by about 25% for people along this corridor. Next slide. East Main Street is almost 14 miles long and goes from downtown Columbus through Bexley, Whitehall, and through Reynoldsburg, and ends up approximately where the Ohio Department of Agriculture is right now. About 63% of the parcels along this route are experiencing persistent opportunity gaps. And this connects to 100,000 jobs in our community. And this is slated to open in 2029, 2030. Next slide. And then we have the Northwest BRT corridor, which is almost 20 miles long. So we're looking to phase that in 3 different phases. Phase 1 is started to design now, and this will be operational by the early 2030s. Again, these are all predicated upon issue 47 passing. But in phase 1, it's almost 9 miles long. Over half of that is in center running bus rapid, or center running dedicated lanes for transit. It's about a $200 million project. It represents about 30% of all of the jobs in Franklin County. And so while this is an area that is not necessarily an area that is experiencing persistent opportunity gaps, it is an area where we want to get people to because of the jobs that are here. Just in that phase 1, you have OSU, you have the OSU Medical Center, and then you've got Riverside Hospital all in that area. Next slide. So if we look on the more sidewalk side of LinkUS, next slide, 96% of CODA's riders access transit by either walking or biking. So that's why investing in sidewalks, bikeways, and trails is so important. So 27.5% of that 0.5% sales tax increase that's being proposed goes to sidewalks, bikeways, and trails. That 27.5% is anticipated to generate about $60 million a year. That basically doubles the amount of money for our region to invest in sidewalks, bikeways, and trails. And that'll help us be able to fund the 500 plus miles that we'd like to see by 2050. Next slide. So basically, WARPC worked with all of those jurisdictions within our community, the 17 cities, the 8 villages, the 17 townships, to prioritize a list of projects that could be built if the levy passes over the next 5 years in a capital improvement program. And so they have been able to show on those, the blue that you see in the map, those are the projects we're talking about. So if the levy passes, it will be able to fund 83 projects in just the first 5 years. It's almost $260 million of investment and represents 150 miles of new sidewalks, bikeways, and trails improvements. That's basically longer than the distance between Columbus to driving to Cleveland. 55 of those 83 projects also impact more than just the city of Columbus or the city of Dublin, but multiple cities. And 65 of those projects will either be completed or in construction by 2030. And so, and then the last point, all of the communities that participate in this process, 35 jurisdictions, got their top priority projects funded. Next slide. When we talk about, we've used transit to connect people to greater opportunity, we want to use sidewalks, bikeways, and trails to connect people to greater opportunity. So over half of the projects and over half of the dollars being invested of that 260 million is going to be invested in the areas that are experiencing opportunity gaps. This map is very similar to the map that you saw at the beginning, just the colors are different. So the orange, the darker the orange is where opportunity is most being felt. The lighter areas are where opportunity is not being felt. And the thicker the line, those are the projects that are supporting equity. So 71% of all of the sidewalks, bikeways, and trails projects serve areas with high poverty rates. 54% serve neighborhoods with high shares of minority residents. 73% of projects serve areas with high elderly populations. 60% of the projects serve areas with high proportions of people with disabilities. And over half of the projects serve areas with residents that have low access to personal vehicles. Next slide. So when we get to the more opportunity side of things, really people will ask, well, where has this been done successfully? I'm going to give you 2 great examples. One is in Cleveland. Has anybody rode the Cleveland Helpline? No? So Cleveland Helpline is about 7 miles long and connects downtown Cleveland, Capitol Square, along Euclid Avenue to East Cleveland. And along that 7 miles, 4.5 miles is the center running bus rapid transit. In 2008, it cost $200 million to build, but over the last 15, 16 years, it's generated about $10 billion in new investment in that area. So for every dollar that was spent publicly, almost $200 have been invested privately. And so altogether, 8,800 housing units have been built along that 7 mile stretch and 13,000 jobs. So that helpline connects the Cleveland Clinic and University hospitals, not too dissimilar for where we're trying to connect the OSU Medical Center and Riverside Hospital. And then if we look at the impact in the Twin Cities area, which is Minneapolis, St. Paul, over the last 15 years, where they've invested in rapid transit, they've experienced $16 billion in new development. And 37% of all the development that's happened in their 7-county region has happened along their rapid transit lines. And then the other great part when we talk about focusing our future growth, all of that 37% has happened on only 3% of the land. And altogether, they've seen 52,000 housing units be built. Next slide. So really what we're looking to do is build the infrastructure we need to grow our economy. we're gonna have 1 million more people, we can't really have 1 million more cars on a roadway. In the coming weeks, LinkUS is going to share an equitable transit-oriented development action plan, which is basically going to provide recommendations for how we focus our future growth along our key transit lines, while also locating housing, jobs, and services near transit to improve opportunity for everybody. This complements the zone-in effort that you may have been engaged recently that enables more mixed use and higher density residential development along the key transit lines as well. Next slide. So just as a preview on this study, on the 3 corridors that are in design right now, it basically shows that there's significant opportunity to equitably grow our economy along the 3 rapid transit corridors that are in design. And by analyzing potential opportunity at 15 of the 48 stops, so basically 5 stops that were not randomly, but were picked on each of the corridors in design, in just the next 10 years, we believe that there could be 11,000 new housing units built on just those sites, 2.3 million square feet, or 40 football fields of new commercial and industrial development, and 1,100 new hotel rooms. Next slide. And so this is the final video that I'll show you here. This is 3 of our local business leaders talking about how these investments connect us to greater opportunity.
When we think about a future forward city, a place where people have options in their careers and in their personal lives, their quality of life can be improved by having a ton of options in terms of mobility throughout the region. My name is Sandy Doyle Ahern. I am the president of EMH&T. The Columbus region is a great place for people to grow and develop in their careers. But one of the challenges that we've had is related to our ability to get around the area. LinkUS is expanding our options. We have to realize that if we don't create mobility options throughout the region, then we're actually remaining disconnected.
When we look ahead about where we are going as a community and really thinking about our goal of social and economic prosperity for many people, where there's an opportunity gap that we can capitalize on right now. Jonathan Lee, President and CEO, we have to think and make decisions not about the city based on what it is today. We're making decisions right now that have to address the growth of what the city will be in 2030. We're not hoping, we're not waiting, that we're proactively building that city that we want to be. In my world, good ideas can come from everywhere. And are you accommodating and enabling someone who may not have a car or someone who may not have access to certain modes of transit to access the job?
When LinkUS comes together, I'm going to be most excited about is that we are a community that made this investment in our future for all people. I'm Matt Scanlon, I'm the founder and CEO of Ant Health. We're looking for people that want to make the world better. So they're going to look at our community and they're going to say, is that the kind of community that's diverse and that's a pulse and a vibe and an energy? And that's public transit. They're looking for those kind of things. And LinkUS allows that type of connectivity that people are increasingly trying to find in their future home.
So there's one final slide here, or 2 final slides. One's a transition slide. But if this is something that interests you, I'd love for you to sign up for our newsletter. We've got that QR code will take you to our sign up on that. We'd love for you to share videos or newsletters on social media. And just like we're doing here, if there's organizations that you're part of, we'd love to come out and speak with you. Even though the election is 2 weeks from now, this doesn't mean that, if and when it passes, that our work is done. It's really just the beginning. And so we want to make sure that people understand what we're trying to do to improve our community. And then lastly, we'd love for you to comment on LinkUS media articles. So if you see something in the Dispatch or Business First or Columbus Underground, love for you to talk about that. And so that second QR code will take you to basically all of our different resources. So I've showed you 2 videos tonight. We could have about 20 of them, covering all sorts of different topics related to LinkUS, but then also hearing from actual people about how transit will impact them. And so with that, I hope I didn't go too long, Craig.
No worries.
Happy to take any questions that anybody has.
So with that, the sales tax being on like the majority of the money coming in, is that sales tax directly on the tickets that people are purchasing to ride the bus, or where's that sales tax come from?
I don't, the sales tax is basically on all non-food items. But I don't believe, I'm not sure that there is a tax on the fares that people pay. There is no, the fares are staying the same. There's gonna be no increase in the fares. Right now, it's essentially about $2 one way to ride on CODA. There's no plans for CODA to increase their fares. The sales tax should be able to cover any of the additional operating costs that result from that. Unfortunately, the state of Ohio doesn't give us a progressive way to raise revenue for any local government. And so the sales tax though is something though that one of the nice things is that everybody pays it even if they don't live here. So if somebody's visiting from Chicago and is staying downtown in one of our hotels, they're paying that. It's not a property tax where only the property tax owners are the ones who are impacted by it. And we know that it's not an insignificant amount of money, but it really comes down to about a half, that's a 0.5%. And so it just depends on how much you consume as to how much that cost is. But basically, if you took all of the sales tax revenue that the county collected last year and you divided by the number of residents, what is calculated is that the average person would spend an additional $100 to $120 over the course of a year as a result of that 0.5% increase. So not a month, but a year. So an additional, $10 to $12 a month. But it really just depends on how much people consume. What are the questions?
Sorry, you mentioned something, this is maybe a little off topic. So
Sure.
the state of Ohio doesn't provide progressive options for
local governments, yes.
Can you maybe say something about
Yeah, so what I mean by that is, at the federal level, on the income tax, for example, the more you make in income, the higher your tax bracket is. At the state, there is a state income tax, and there's only 2 brackets now, there used to be, I wanna say 4. But the more you make at the state from an income tax level, the higher the tax bracket you have. But from a local government standpoint, the state really gives the levy agencies and schools the ability to raise income through the property tax. And there's not the property tax is the property tax based on the valuation of that property. It doesn't mean that if it's valued higher, if the person has more means to pay that tax. At the same time, if you're CODA, you're paying the same amount of sales tax whether you make a lot of money or you don't make a lot of money. And then from a local city government perspective, the state doesn't allow us to have progressive tax rates. So no matter what, in the city of Columbus, you're paying 2.5% income tax. So the state doesn't give cities the option to maybe charge higher if you make more money. So that's what I mean by a progressive tax.
Right, versus regressive tax.
Yes, and so a sales tax, people say, hey, that's a regressive tax. And I would say, you're right, but that's we only have regressive taxes to choose from to fund transit.
I guess I just wasn't aware that that was kind of because of the state.
Yeah, the state is who gives the local jurisdictions the authority to be able to raise that income. And so the state, puts limits on how much those things can go up. For instance, a transit agency can't go above 1.5%. So we're at 1%. But that's the state's, the Ohio Revised Code is what sets those limits. What other questions?
Can you tell us about the interactions with the Bike Plus planning program to develop LinkUS?
That's right. So Bike Plus is also run out of my department in public service, and it is really hand in glove with what we're proposing from the sidewalks, bikeways, and trails piece. What Bike Plus is kind of a more focused program solely on the city of Columbus, and also gets to a more granular level of not just the sidewalks, bikeways, and trails piece, but it's also looking at scooters and other forms of mobility. But it is certainly both of those items are informed by each other and are very much coordinated. And later this year is where we'll be providing basically the final report on Bike Plus. Either way, doesn't matter to me.
This is really minor, but the bus that I got off downtown by my place to work every morning, there was a visually impaired woman who would get off with me, and she'd be using her cane as she crossed in the crosswalk. And the scooter people would leave scooters, and it's not just the users of the scooters, it's the people who take them into their apartments, charge them, and bring them back out. And they would stack them in the middle of where she had to walk going up the ramp onto the sidewalk. And I reported it to the city. They told me to call the company, and I busted the company, I did a letter to the newspaper with a picture of these things. I got to where I would come and try to get ahead of her and throw them in the grass. When you're looking at all these lovely new center of the road stations, are you gonna provide any scooter parking?
So one of the things we're looking to have along each of these corridors are micro mobility hubs. So areas where there will be scooters, that there will be bike share areas where you can charge an e-bike, and also some basic equipment to make bicycle repairs. The scooters are one of those things where everyone will say, I hate them, and at the same time, they also are effective in getting people not to use their car over short distances. So 100% agree with you that it is a problem, especially for people who have mobility challenges. But it's also to where, I can't remember exactly the stat, but it was a pretty amazing stat, but it was something like on average, I wanna say like we're getting 9,000 less trips a month on the roadways as a result of people using the scooters. So it's a constant battle that we have. There's actually a company that has now come into Columbus, that not sanctioned by us, that is like removing scooters, and there's like scooter wars that are happening. But I would just tell you, I appreciate you letting 311 know and the company know. We'll do our very best to try to make sure that they don't cause those challenges. But there are also some benefits to the scooters. What are the questions?
I wonder, so are you also planning for green spaces to be integrated with all of what that you're doing? And if so, what kind of?
Yes.
So a lot of what, it basically, to the projects that we're building right now on the 3 corridor projects are not necessarily building like new parks next to them. But this creates, through that equitable transit-oriented development plan, creates the ability for us to be creating those thoughts as we're imagining how development happens along those areas. So I know that, for instance, one of the recommendations in that plan is to make strategic acquisitions of property for things like parks, or for things that the city can hold on to, for things like daycare centers, or for future food retail, those kind of things. But if you look at the sidewalks, bikeways, and trails piece, that is all about connecting people to our parks and being able to make it much easier for people to access recreation in our community. That's the part that I think is probably the most revolutionary piece, just because there's not a lot of communities that have done it to the scale that we're doing. I mean, we really have an opportunity here to be probably one of the lower end connected cities to one of the most connected cities in a pretty short amount of time. So I'm really, really excited about that. And then I think there's a lot of opportunities there too, all along those routes. If you think, we got 150 miles there. that's a great opportunity for how do we get more native plantings all along those projects that we're building. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for this group to be involved in that.
Yeah, because even your mock-ups show these little parts of, just a little in-between space and so on, color green, to indicate
Yeah.
maybe there's a space different. And that's actually also very small spaces are important to manage as well.
Sure.
In a sustainable.
Everything counts.
Yeah, so.
These are, so CODA is in charge of the design of the projects with a lot of input from the city of Columbus, as well as the jurisdictions in which these projects are happening. This is a rendering, this is not exactly what it's gonna look like, but those are the kind of things that I wanna be able to share with the design team and say, hey, what are we planning to do in here? Are we doing it? Are you making this look really nice and we're not actually gonna do it? Or if we are gonna do it, let's make sure that we're using native plants to be able to provide that.
Something to add to that is, I don't know if you're aware of the Blueprint Columbus
Oh, yeah.
project, so that could easily be integrated with this and
Yep.
have green infrastructure involved with it as well.
That's one of the thoughts, is that the center running stations would have green infrastructure elements built into there. It's still in the midst of design, so I can't really tell you, is it for sure happening? I don't know yet. I would love to see it happen, and I'd love to make sure that it's maintained well.
In that regard, it might be good to think about involving, planning to involve community members in the maintenance of the planting, because for Blueprint, for example, there's some reflections on the way that it's managed.
Yeah.
And so I'm originally from Europe, and so there's many incentives coming from, city government to invite community members to plan things around their homes, in the streets and so on. And once you get that investment, you have more longevity, you have a better stewardship, et cetera, et cetera. So I
Right, those are great suggestions, and certainly this won't be the only time that we talk to this group about how we do a better job of doing that. I think the other thing that we wanna do is along, West Broad Street and others, is really get some organizations, if they don't already exist, like special improvement districts, that'll take ownership of the maintenance of these areas, and also work with community or organizations like yours to make sure that they're doing it in the right ways, and that they're providing that maintenance at the level that makes sense.
So how can we push this project to use native plants? How can we community members say, this is what we want, and get that guaranteed?
So in terms of a guarantee, I don't know about that, but what I can guarantee is that I'm taking the feedback of this group tonight and providing that to the people that are designing this project, and also making sure that before we make any final decisions on what's actually being planted along these routes, that we come back to this group and say, hey, here's what we're looking to plant in these meetings. Here are the species, here are these things. How does the group feel about that?
Right, because I don't think that heather's native that they've got in the middle.
Yeah, as I said, I would not put a lot of stock on the finer details.
I know, being a smart ass.
No, that's all right. And just for instance, a lot of people have said, hey, that's not really great bike lane protection, and we
Right.
agree.
Right.
It's not gonna look like that. It's going to be a concrete curb designed at, the best standards that we can have, potentially even having the bikeway raised a bit as well, maybe even being at the sidewalk level, so that it's not at the same level as the cars. And so these are renderings. This just gives you an idea of what it could be. And at the same time, what we hope is what was built is even better what you see in that picture, and that we're using native plants to do that.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So you said this is Broad Street. I realize it's just a rendering. Where
Yep.
do you envision this being? Is this out where it's?
This is a good question. I can't remember. I cannot remember what street this is. We purposely wanted to make this pretty innocuous
Right.
at first, because we didn't want it to be that's not what Eureka Avenue looks
Right,
like today.
exactly.
I think it might even actually be Eureka Avenue.
Okay.
Is where this is at. But really, and what we're looking at for Broad Street to have an incredibly different feel than it is today. I think what we're looking for Broad Street to be is a lot more like High Street.
Right.
Where you have neighborhood retail, that you have a street that is not 45 miles an hour, that is 30 miles an hour. You may not have, parking on the side of the street because we need that for the dedication of the buses and also for the bike lanes. But really, we're trying to put people first, not cars first. A very different way than the past of how these projects have happened. And from the mayor to the council president to our director, that's what we're committed to doing.
Back to the plantings and stuff, is that gonna be like a bidding situation where you'll take, people will have to bid for those projects? And if so, can some of the, can you have minimum standards, like say, to bid on this, it must be 50% native? Or, something in that neighborhood. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of limitations because of the location, street salt, and lack of water unless you install irrigation and stuff. So all those things, there's gonna be limitations, so.
I think along the corridors, actually, other than maybe at these center stations, there's probably not gonna be a ton of plantings per se, but there is gonna be a couple of hundred new street trees that are put in that don't exist today. I think the greatest opportunity for more native plantings really happens on those sidewalks, bikeways, and trails projects, where I think, we'd love to have more conversation with you as to, if we're not saying it needs to be native, I don't know why we wouldn't be requiring native plantings to be in all these things. These are projects that are going to have, the design of these projects go through, not like a lowest bid, but it's usually a request for proposal. And so the city's generally not selecting these projects from a design standpoint purely on cost. And so that's where we do have the ability, through the scoping of the project.
But like having a minimum standard
That's right,
to apply, then everybody
Yeah.
would be at least on an
That's
equal
right.
playing.
That's right, and I would say, I could be wrong, but we've got some great firms in town that are in the design and the landscape architecture space. I would be shocked that any of them would be proposing anything that wasn't native. But you would go differently with the.
Yeah.
So these
That
are
was
the
a
things.
lovely way to say it.
Yeah, so these are the things that, we wanna make sure that you're holding us accountable, making sure that we're doing those things. As I said, I don't know why we might have, from a city standpoint, I don't know if you've had recreation parks here, but they have, their whole new tree, ordinance, and I'm using the wrong terminology, but.
Urban Forestry Master Plan.
Yeah. I don't know to what degree that requires native species to be planted, or as our approved trees, but those are the kind of things I'm with you. I make a very conscious effort to plant native trees on our property.
I had one more question. You said that this sounds like it's a match, funding from the federal government if 47, if that bill or that levy passes.
Yeah.
Is that all the money that the government, the federal government, is it all under your control, or do you have to work with the entire state, or with the new transit that is being proposed from Cleveland to Cincinnati?
So a couple different things. So the Federal Transit Administration has what they call their capital investment grants. And they've had these grants for a long time. There's basically two of them, two main ones. There's small starts, which are projects 400 million and under, and then there's new starts, which are above 400 million. And so the transit authorities are the ones who apply for those grants from the federal government, and the federal government directly contracts with the transit authority on those projects. And then the transit authority works with the local jurisdictions, because these projects all go through the city of Columbus or Bexley, wherever these projects go through. So the state really isn't involved in these unless the state has jurisdiction over some of the right of way. And so, for instance, on West Broad Street, the state does have some jurisdiction over this project, because in the unincorporated areas the township areas of West Broad Street, ODOT really maintains that right of way that's there. When you talked about 3C plus D, you know, all these things, you know, whether it's Bike Plus, 3C plus D, the new airport, these are all things that we are all taking into account as we plan these things. We're all hand in glove as making sure that all of these things are complementary to one another. And we're really excited about that project. Separate from what we're doing, and on 3C plus D, that's where Morpsey is really spearheading it right now, from at least Central Ohio's perspective. But the city of Columbus is very supportive, Frank County, everybody's really excited about that. We just need to make sure the state remains committed to the project, because if we didn't give back $400 million that was awarded under the Obama administration, that John Kasich sent back to Washington, we'd already have a 3C plus D right now. So that's what
California, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's where federal government was going to make this investment, and it would have happened, but our previous governor sent the money back. So that's what we need to make sure that, whether it's Governor DeWine, and so far he's been amenable to 3C plus D, but hopefully the future governor will be as well. What other questions?
Excellent.
All right.
Roy, thank you very much.
No, thank you,
Pleasure.
and I'll send these slides to the, actually, you've got them. Yeah, you've got, I'll change the first slide because I forgot to change the title slide. We did a presentation today for the entire city of Columbus staff. And so it was an email that went out to all 8,000 of our employees. We had about 120 people do a lunch and learn today. So I need to fix that first slide because it still says citywide presentation. But again, thank you so much for the time. And really look forward to continuing to engage with you. Thank you.
All right.
Greg, do you need anything else?
I was gonna say you're out of here.
All right.
You're welcome to stay.
Hey,
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
I would love to stay, but I have had way too many over the last year nights where I have been out. I gotta get home to my wife and my 2 young girls. But I appreciate it.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's the whole idea of letting you go first.
All right.
It's great. I'm excited for these opportunities. Again, we're talking about potentially hundreds of miles of habitat. So from our perspective of planting native plants, the whole idea of connected corridors of habitat means we can have whole transportation corridors that go from here to Dublin. That can go, practically Reynoldsburg to Hilltop. I mean, you're just talking about huge amounts of lands that can be incorporated into native plant habitat. So I think LinkUS, even though it's considered more of a transportation initiative, it has a lot of habitat possibilities to it. With that, I'd like to move into the business portion of our meeting. The first thing I want to touch on is what I'll call a treasurer's report, even though we don't technically have a treasurer. But we have a bank account as of about 3 days ago. We have a current bank account balance of $1,150, which are the proceeds from our, what I hope to be our first annual end of season native plant sale. I want to particularly point out the guy in the do-good hat. Michael Keeler of Ohio Native Concepts was instrumental in not only figuring out how to do this, but making it happen, providing the plant materials, transporting the plant materials, everything. So certainly be aware of Michael's contribution in that direction. Real quickly, I want to just touch on some steering committee recent accomplishments. Yeah, we'll go fast with this. There are are two ways, I think many of you probably already know this, but there are two ways to essentially be a organization where donations can come in and be tax deductible for the person that makes that donation. One is for the organization to not be a registered nonprofit with the IRS, but create a relationship with an existing nonprofit in the area that is a 501c3 and establish what's called a fiscal agent relationship. I personally explored that with 10 different local conservation organizations to no avail, for good reasons. You know, when you explore this whole fiscal agency situation, you realize they have to take on the responsibility for us to keep track of documents, income, expenses, all the bookkeeping that goes into it, and then they have to generate or at least sign off on the annual nonprofit tax return. For all of that labor and hours of work, they usually skim off a percentage, similar to what a MasterCard merchant loses when a customer pays with a credit card. That merchant doesn't get that amount of money, it gets a little bit less. The end result is, there just didn't seem to be any opportunities for us to have a fiscal agent. So we came to the conclusion that we're gonna have to go the other way, which is become an official nonprofit organization. And in doing that, it requires a profound number of steps, which I'm thrilled to say we have accomplished most of them in the last several weeks. And when I say people have been volunteering and helping and working, I'm talking about hours of work on these things, but we're making good progress. We filed our articles of incorporation with the Ohio Secretary of State. Those were accepted on August 14th. We got assignment from the U.S. Treasury of a federal EIN number, which is an employee reporting number, also on the 14th. I've attended multiple meetings from the City of Columbus Nature Preserves Advisory Council and the Route 161 Task Force. It kind of ties into what Roy was talking about this evening. We had volunteers at the Lyndon McKinley STEM High School tree planting on Friday, October 18th. We had volunteers at the Hamilton Elementary tree planting on the same day. The very next day, Saturday, 25 trees were planted at Valley Forge Elementary School. We managed to get our brand new Google Workspace, Google Meet account, which hopefully will have function more smoothly next time. And we now have a nonprofit bank account at Heartland Bank, Clintonville branch. Recent events are end of season native plant sale. Thanks again to Michael Keeler from Ohio Native Concepts, but also to Lynette Overholzer, Dan Rath, Michaela Moore, Carrie Reed, Charles Schumacher. And again, we raised $1,150 was our portion of the proceeds. I'm meeting on Monday with Heartland Bank to explore some additional banking matters, such as point of sale acceptance of credit cards. We hope to have another native plant sale in the spring, and we need to be able to absorb funds for that directly to Franklin County Pollinator Pathway. Michael took care of that at the previous sale through his company, Ohio Native Concepts. We are working on very hard on creating our constitution and bylaws, which are required for becoming a nonprofit. These are more technical documents than might be suspected. It takes a lot of time and thought to word these things carefully. I want to give special thanks out to Laura and Phil Davis, Carolyn Watkins. I know Carolyn Evans is local. Tyler Dennis, Lynette Overholzer, Dan Rath, Michael Keeler, Michaela Moore. It is my goal to try to submit our IRS application for 501c3 nonprofit status in early November. That is usually a 3-month waiting period for review. You send it in, you wait and hear what they say. But obviously our goal is to get some of this infrastructure thing over with so we can really move forward to doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is putting native plants in the ground.
Yes.
So we're trying to do it right, but it is a patient slog process. A couple other things real fast. We're exploring the use of a business card sized handout for our tabling events instead of a traditional full-size trifold color brochure. People take those and they recycle them. It doesn't serve much purpose and they're expensive to make. These things can have a QR code on it, direct people specifically to our website, and it can save both paper and greatly reduce our printing costs. Flow has been using a QR code volunteer registration system that leads people directly to their registration information and also their liability release form. We're trying to basically copy that. I've been working with Laura Fay at Flow to see how we instigate that for us. I already mentioned the early bird native plant sale. We're hoping to do that in the very early spring so that we're not intruding or competing with any other wonderful conservation groups that are already active here in Central Ohio. Wild Ones, for example, has their big, Lynette, isn't it, May? Something like that. We don't want to take anything away from anyone else that's already doing great things. We just want to add to it. And so I think the thinking is that we can carve out our little niche at the end of season after everybody's pretty much done and have it be an early spring sale, and that can raise income for us without competing with anybody else. Couple standing committee reports. Carolyn, do you want to say anything about our grant status, plans?
We're trying to come up with ideas of what are the things that we want money for that we'll need to purchase in the next few months, so that I can write that into a grant proposal that has to be submitted by the middle of January, and I want to try to have the draft of it in their system in mid-December.
Mid-December.
So if you have ideas of things we need money for, let Craig and me know.
Please send me your thoughts. We're trying to, take all these sources of information. All of our new members have ideas and suggestions. Please send them in. They're not going into cyberspace. They're actually getting bundled out, and people are trying to put these all together. I see Sean back in the back. You want to give us a brief update on municipal ordinances and House Bill 364?
Yeah, and I will defer to Carolyn if she wants to talk about House Bill 364, but what I'm passing on, I only brought a couple copies of this because it's very early, but I started going through the municipal ordinances. I started with Columbus because it's the most impactful, and then I also added Upper Arlington because that's where I live, I'm familiar with it, and this is kind of what started for me at the very end there. The 10-inch limitation for my tree lawn, which was a big pain this year. We were gonna, make a nice Clintonville Hell Strip style tree lawn in Upper Arlington, and sounds like first we probably need to get our city council to change the law. I think Carolyn and I are gonna go through some of the other, 4 dozen municipalities in Franklin County. If anyone is interested in helping, or if you specifically know your local ordinances, that would be helpful. I through work, I know the Ohio Revised Code pretty well, but I don't have any clue. Westerville, New Albany, all the many cities and townships and other municipalities we have here in Franklin County. But this is kind of the form I'm looking at, the city, code section, and then I'm gonna go back and add links to the code section so that we can click on them when this is all finished. And I kind of highlighted some of the key things, the lists of noxious weeds, and then the height limitation. And I don't know if anyone can speak to it, but it sounds like there's now some concerns from the Clintonville Hell Strip folks that they might need a permit to plant anything when there is a city tree nearby. So I'll be kind of monitoring that, see if there's any new developments there.
Sean, have you spoken with Dr. Augie Briscoe?
I have not yet.
She is the Clintonville Hell Strip gardener each person, and would be very approachable on what's going on there. Also, Marty Frida was up in Westerville Health Strip Gardens, and both of those people are great sources of information on their particular looked house. I think what Sean has pointed out, you know, we need all the help we can get. I just keep saying it over and over again. If there's anybody out there that has an interest, a skill set, something that you're, a problem that you've identified, step forward. We can, you know, we're a fledgling group, we're just getting started, and the more people we can get to step forward, not only to volunteer for our activities and our plantings, but also just solve some of these infrastructure standing committee issues would be wonderful. So everyone's welcome, please join in. Jill Prout is our habitat person for schools. She's unable to be here tonight, but I just want to briefly give an update on her stuff. Valley Forge Elementary School, Butterfly Garden. Flo is contributing benches, a sunshade, and native plants. I've worked with that principal before. That's going to be a nice project. That school is where we just planted 25 trees, and they're just totally psyched on that. They also have what almost amounts to be like a second lot, so it's huge, next door, that's just cool season grasses. They're planning on what I'm gonna call an outdoor education area there, that will have native plantings, paths, maybe some signage that identify either habitat or native plant species or both. I mean, it's amazing, it's great. This is happening in a similar way in smaller scale at Devonshire Elementary. They hope to install that possibly next week. If I find out some dates, we'll try to send you an email. There's an effort at Fort Hayes downtown, basically, that's kind of on hold, but it's in the works. And then where Jill teaches at Tremont Elementary School in Upper Arlington, they just established a 300 square foot native plant butterfly and moth garden. They're calling it, I think, their outdoor land lab. They've got over 200 plugs from cooperating with Gail Martin up at Natives in Harmony. We're going to use the OSU plant by numbers system and have third graders particularly and other students participate in this whole process. So there's a lot of wonderful things happening in schools. We have some other habitat projects in the works. There's a business site. Lynette, would you like to comment on the Yellow Springs taproom project?
Yeah, so, some of you probably are familiar with the Yellow Springs taproom on Indianola. It used to be the Crest. I don't know how long ago it was the Crest, but, the Crest had a raised bed, strip of planting that they used for their concept of, you know, growing and using their own vegetables for food. Those raised beds are rotting, and the taproom wants to just get rid of them, and they are ready for us to plant native plants in there. So we actually have our first planting project as soon as we can get people together for it, because we have plants to go in the ground. We're gonna redo the rain garden that's there, and then also this fall we'd like to take those raised beds out and kind of, there's gravel there, move it around, making pathways, and get the areas ready that we're gonna plant in the spring. So we kind of have 3 phases for all of us to come together and volunteer for it. So I'd like to get the plant redoing of the rain garden done in a couple weeks maybe? I don't know, so. just
Is there
kind of-
any tentative, Dan,
Yeah.
any idea of a date or anything yet?
Yeah, I think I am gonna have some time early, middle, either Tuesday or Wednesday next
Okay,
week.
so we could get started
That
on
I
it,
can
maybe
get the
then finish on the
big
weekend,
stuff out.
something, yeah, maybe next weekend, get a planting party together, so.
Be wonderful. Anyway, literally, as soon as, you know, and of course, it's always weather dependent, but
Yeah.
we haven't had any rain. You know, I'd almost be thrilled to cancel a planting thing in order to get some rain.
Yeah, exactly.
But as soon as we get
Let's
some
plan it every day.
kind of a date worked out,
Yeah.
we'll be
So-
sending out an email, and we'll need lots of volunteers. So please wear your gardening clothes,
Yeah.
bring a water bottle and some gloves
To the Crest,
to the Crest
where,
on Indianola.
Indianola and Crestview.
when?
Yeah.
When did
Well,
we-
we'll get that
we haven't
nailed down and
decided.
get that out to everybody.
Yeah.
You're doing something next Tuesday?
So there's mulberries that are growing in the rain garden that he's gonna cut and treat, and then we need to clean up the rest of the bed, and then we're gonna replant the rain garden, and then we're also gonna be tearing out the.
And while doing the rain garden, we'll be investigating what else
Yeah.
Is this a solo
is
project, or
in
do you
there.
need help that day?
That's probably, I'll take
The
care of it.
mulberries
Okay.
are gonna be just
I'll be
him, but everything else
chainsawing
is
them.
us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
But once the mulberries are cut down, then we could go in as a group and find what's left.
Yeah,
I mean, there
I'm
are
just-
some native plants in there. It was
Yeah,
a
but
really
we're also-
nice little rain garden
I
site.
gotta
Flo
say-
planted it and it was nice, but it's been completely neglected, so.
yeah, I'm concerned about I'm actually working on a job where I'm taking out mulberries and their root systems are
I think
gross.
cutting and treating is probably gonna be the
So,
best to let them rot away.
I don't know
Yeah.
how much space we're even gonna have to work with in there. Still, we'll know more once it comes out.
But we have a bunch of plants set aside that Michael donated for us to add to the rain garden, so
Wonderful.
it'll be a lot prettier.
Thanks so
And
much.
down the road, I
Yes.
have access to many native plants.
Fantastic.
And they're more like rock star,
Yeah.
plants, because I lead the learning garden at Waterman Farm.
Perfect.
And so we have so many volunteer plants. I had a plant sale, the same, like, I think a couple weeks before you guys did. And, we had almost 1,000 plants that were just literally volunteer plants. And a lot of them are species plants, so they volunteer readily.
Nice. Yeah, so like I said, the idea is we're gonna redo the rain garden this fall, get rid of all the old rotting stuff and redesign so that we're ready for spring planting.
Are you envisioning using something like stone or, that type of material rather than wood?
Yeah, we're not gonna do raised beds in there anymore. They don't want raised beds at all.
Okay.
So they want it like ground level, but there's gravel all along the ground that we're gonna move around to make new pathways and things like that, so. There's plan.
Thanks, Lynette.
Yep.
I'm gonna very briefly, I'm working extremely hard to get us out of these meetings on time because nobody needs more meetings. I wanna bring up a couple of, projects, however, that are coming up in the near future that are great opportunities for, Pollinator Pathway volunteers to participate in. One is this Saturday, October 26th, from 9 a.m. to noon. 80 shrubs are being planted in Frank's Park, which is in Hilliard. It is a Columbus Recreation and Parks Department event, so they'll be leading it. I talked to them 2 hours ago. They're looking for 19 more people, and they'd love to have our help. So if you're free on Saturday, even for just part of the morning, they'd love to see you there. Again, Columbus RPD is having instead of a trick or treat, they're calling it a trail or treat event on Wednesday, October 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. I'll be tabling there with probably Lynette. It's a classic Halloween thing with candy, but they're gonna have people in costumes of animals out in the woods along the trails to explain the habitat needs of that animal and then give out candy. It's gonna be held along the Scioto River. I apologize, I don't have the address off the top of my head, but you can find it on the City of Columbus Recreation and Parks site. So if you want to bring your grandchildren or children, or just come yourself and get a Snickers bar, I'll be there and I'll be glad to see you.
I was gonna say, we could probably use a little help.
Everybody can need help, so yeah, please come if you want to, if you can. The big one is in Clintonville on Saturday, November 16th. It'll be from 10 a.m. to noon. Again, it's a Columbus RPD project. Clinton Como Park. They have a native plant area there that was basically invaded with a significant number of weeds. So they mowed it very aggressively from a weed control standpoint right before the drought hit. And so their native plants have taken a major hit. So they're interested in reseeding it. They're gonna provide the tools, the leadership, the rakes, but they're thrilled to, we've been working on this for a couple of months, have Pollinator Pathway volunteers prepare the ground interaction for the soil by raking it and then spreading the seed. It's anticipated we need about 15 people to do that. So if you're free on Saturday, November 16th, we'd love to see you over at Clintonville, Como Park.
What time? What time's that?
10 a.m. to noon. If you will RSVP for that at the Columbus Recreation and Parks.volunteerhub.com. It is a online volunteer registration thing. That way, the woman that I'm working with can keep track of how many volunteers we get. She's basically allowing us to have first dibs on it, which is great, but as a new organization, I don't know how many volunteers we can really get. If she doesn't get enough from us, she's gonna send it out to other conservation organizations just to make sure they have enough people. So we have a great chance to establish ourselves in the conservation world by getting lots of volunteers at this. The address for Clinton Como Park is 3299 Riverside Drive. And again, they're gonna provide the stuff. You just need gardening clothes, gloves, hat and sunscreen, maybe a water bottle. And special thanks go out to Julie Smiley, who is an amazing volunteer for about everything you can think of, and Jenny Doan at Columbus Recreation and Parks. Very quickly, in the next 3 minutes, I'm gonna touch on some updates from local other conservation organizations. Laura Fay from Flow has a tree planting on that Saturday, October 26th. You can check all of these out on the Flow website, so I'm not gonna go through all of them, but I told people I'd try and promote their opportunities. Flow has a tree planting on November 2nd. Sunday, November 3rd is a honeysuckle removal. Sunday, November 10th is work at the Island View Nature Preserve. So again, please check out Flow. We're trying to cooperate and coordinate volunteers with all these existing wonderful conservation groups, so they appreciate our support. Kind of the same thing from FACT. I talked to Luann Hendricks. Saturday, same day, October 26th, they're having a honeysuckle removal. Particularly, she wanted me to mention their annual meeting is on Wednesday, November 13th, from 6:15 to 8:30 at the Carl Road, Columbus Public Library. It's free, it's open to the public, they'd love to see you. SWAG, the Toyota Watershed Advocacy Group is working on their nonprofit status. They've come to the same conclusions we kind of did. You can't find a fiscal agent to save your life. They've done multiple river cleanups and invasive species removal. So they're kind of getting started very much like us. At Grange Audubon, again, check out their website. They have beginner bird walks, which there are only 2 left for the season. Saturday, October 26th and Saturday, November 9th. They start at 10 a.m. and they take you around and help you identify birds. They're also looking for volunteers for their Project Feeder Watch, which is where you sit literally and watch a feeder and try to identify numbers of birds and species of birds that come into the feeder. All of those things provide data for this larger Project Feeder Watch effort. There's a co-prism meeting coming up on November 5th, which I'll attend to represent us. It's the Central Ohio, if I can remember this, Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. Anyway, I'll be going to that and hopefully be able to report back some of their thoughts. Finally, right at 7:30, a couple of important things. We are moving now to quarterly meetings. We've been meeting monthly to try and get this thing off the ground a little bit, but from a general membership standpoint, it seems like quarterly is probably appropriate. They're going to be on the 2nd Thursday of the first month of the quarter. So they're going to be from 6 to approximately 7:30 p.m. We'll try and have a speaker at every one for about a half an hour or so. The dates are gonna be January 9th, April 10th, July 10th, and October 9th. The January meeting is a part of our bylaws in order to elect a board of directors and establish officers, is going to be designated as our annual general meeting, membership meeting. So please be aware of that for the general meeting coming up in January, on January 9th. That should tie in, again, back to our bylaws. We're hoping to have the nomination process and the voting and the elections and all those details worked out in time to incorporate that properly for the January meeting. So you're gonna get an email almost for sure prior to then, hopefully sooner than later, don't give me that look, about voting. And then lastly, appreciate your patience. If I can turn this page. The January meeting, we decided to move our meetings around. If we're gonna represent native plants throughout Franklin County, it seemed appropriate to move around within Franklin County. The January meeting is gonna be held at the Eagle Pavilion at Rotary Lake in Grove City. The address is 3899 Orders, O-R-D-E-R-S, Road, Grove City, 43123. Our guest speaker that night will be Gloria Hartung. She works at the Gardens of Gants Farm. She's going to share with us their efforts regarding restoration projects with native plant habitats. Two quick notices. We're going to try and have for a winter series of monthly events, which I guess we're calling kind of the winter series of events, once a month, something. So we don't just go all the way through the winter and lose all this enthusiasm and momentum we have. If you have any ideas for a speaker, a class, a workshop, anything, please send it to me. We are going to try and have one on winter sowing, which requires plastic milk jugs, basically. So if you would start saving your 1 gallon or even half-gallon plastic milk jugs, we'll be able to use them for this workshop. And the final thing is, I was meeting with another member, Paul Brower, in Clintonville, and he has showed me a device I'd never seen before, an urban deer management gadget. It's a motion detector attached to a water sprinkler. And so it's an urban deer thing. You know, everybody's pulling their hair out with the deer. He's had great success with it. His neighbors are now using it. That basically, as you would imagine, a deer walks by the motion detector and a sprinkler goes off and squirts water all over the place. Well, the deer, he said, have become habituated to the length of the sprinkler. He's watched them, they come up close, it's like an invisible fence. And they know not to go any further because then they'll trigger the darn thing. They're having great success with it. I looked them up on Amazon. There are multiple little companies that make them. Anyway, it's an idea for all of us struggling with urban deer management. And with that, I'm going to thank you so much for your 4 minutes of extra patience. Are there any closing comments that we need to make? Otherwise, thank you. Good evening.
I've been trying to get that to you. I was gonna suggest that we pass it around and go add to it, so see if.
This is exactly.
To add to the